Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya wal Mursaleen. So, continuing with our series of lectures on making halal money, we want to go on to buying a house. So, obviously bearing in mind the idea, the general halal haram of sales in general. So we want to look at buying a house and comparing a conventional mortgage to an Islamic mortgage. And this is just going to be very, very brief because, again, it's just an introduction. So we have a conventional mortgage and an Islamic mortgage. As we can see, there's these two lists, there's these two processes, and one is a little bit more complex than the other. So if we compare these two, there are at least three things that happen in both. So you go to the bank, Islamic bank, non-Islamic bank. You are going to put a down payment on a house. So you don't have the cash to buy a house, that's why you're going to a bank. So you're going to put a down payment on the bank. You're going to pay a certain amount on the house. You are then, as a customer, you're going to be paying installments for the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 35 years, however long the mortgage is. Also, what we're going to see in both is that the house is going to become collateral. It's going to become a rahan against the loan. Meaning that if you do not pay the installments, if you forestall on your installments, then eventually what's going to happen is the bank, whether Islamic or un-Islamic, Islamic bank or the whatever in both Islamic insurance, in Islamic mortgage and a conventional mortgage, that house is going to be sold so that the debt can be paid off. So you are always that house is always liable to be sold off at your cost as the customer. So that those things are similar. What things are different? Number one, in a conventional mortgage, there is a loan with interest. So the bank is interested in the house because they want to know how much they have to loan you. And they're interested in the house because they want to know what is the value of this house. So they're not going to loan you more than you need. And we're also going to make sure that you can pay us back with the interest. We're going to also make sure that this house is sellable should we need to sell it as collateral. In the Islamic mortgage, the bank buys the house. This is the fundamental difference. The Islamic bank, or the bank that is doing this Islamic mortgage, is going to buy that house from the owner. And they're not only going to buy that house, but they're going to take possession. The customer then buys the house from the bank for a much higher price because the bank bought it in cash. The bank buys it in cash from the previous owner and sells it to you in credit. So they are not loaning you the money to buy that house. They are buying the house in cash and then selling the house to you in credit. And you're going to pay over a series of time. So this is the fundamental difference. So one is a loan. The other is two sales contracts. So as long as both of those sale contracts are halal, totally fine transaction. So in a conventional mortgage, the bank makes money out of you two ways. Either through the interest that you pay them, or through the fact that they sell a house that you didn't make your payments, and they sell your house, and you ended up paying them for money, and they're selling a house or getting or selling off your house for cheap. So those are these ways that in the conventional mortgage, right? The whole thing with the conventional mortgage is a loan. You are paying interest on a loan. In the Islamic mortgage, you are not paying interest on a loan. You are buying a house from somebody in installments. And this key thing here of taking possession, that the bank buys the house and then takes possession. This is a very important concept in Islamic law, possession, qabd. What does it mean? It means that you have control over this thing, and then you are now liable for this thing. Any damages, anything happens to this thing, if this house now collapses on somebody, if somebody or there's some kind of maintenance to be done, it's on you, right? This is the importance of possession is very important in Islamic law, right? And so the Prophet ﷺ, he said, do not sell that which you don't have. So we've already seen in the previous recording that you cannot sell something you don't have. So you cannot go to an Islamic bank and say, hi guys, can you sell me that house that you don't own yet? No. Okay, can they pay for it and then you just take it? No, they have to take possession, right? And in principle, possession means they pick up the house and put it in their pocket. Now, obviously, you don't do that with a house, but it means they're going to have legal and physical access to that house. In principle, it's going to be registered in their name. It's like somebody selling a house to somebody and that person selling it to somebody else, right? And so in that, there is liability. They are liable. It's complex. There's a risk. If you, in a loan, you didn't buy the house in a conventional mortgage, you did not buy the house, right? You did not buy the house from the bank in a conventional mortgage. So if there's something wrong with the house, you don't go back to the bank and say, hey guys, that turns out the house has a problem. But in a Islamic mortgage, that's what you do. Because I bought the house from you. I bought the house from you. There's something wrong with the house. So now this bank is liable. And it could well be that the bank, as a businessman, as a trader, bought a house for more than it was actually worth and sold it and then had that house returned to them. So now this bank might have a house that is not worth that much on their hands. That's a huge liability. It's a huge hassle. That's the nature of business. That's the nature of business. That's what happens as a businessman. You buy things and you sell things, and sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes it works out and you make a lot of money. Sometimes it doesn't. That's the nature of business. So in a conventional mortgage, the bank is not doing that, skipping that whole route. It's just lending money. Whereas in Islamic mortgage, no, the bank is a tradesman, is a businessman that bought something and sold something. So the bank is taking possession of this specific house, right? And there are certain steps that has to happen with. It could be that it's registered in their name. It could be that they have in principle, having the key to the house. It's not usually that simple, but the point is they have this legal ability, the access to this house. They didn't just shift money around. They had qabd, legal or effective possession of that house. Number 2, and these two go hand in hand, is that by having possession and the liability shifting from owner A to the bank to owner B, and not shifting just from owner A to owner B, they are liable to. With that liability comes a profit. So, Mr. Bankman, you invested in this house and you invested in me and you sold it to me. You now get to make profit out of me. That's the principle in the deen. The Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Kharaj bil-Daman. Says profit is only earned through liability. If you're not liable for anything, then you'd have no right to profit. You only get what you give. The fact that you've risked money, right? You've now risked money means now you have a right to earn money. So we have nothing wrong with the bank making as much money as they want because they have put their neck out. As opposed to in a conventional mortgage, they didn't put their neck out. And so the bank becomes liable for the house. They have taken possession of the house. It's now in their possession, and now they're now selling it to you. And that means you might go back to them and say, I want my money back because this house is not what it's not what I thought. There was a huge problem with it. And I'm going to go back to you for this because you, Mr. Bank Manager, you bought this house. An Islamic mortgage is more risky for the bank. It is more risky for the bank. And is therefore rightfully more expensive. So many people, they don't understand this. They don't understand the financial problems involved in what the bank is doing and the financial benefits in what the bank is doing. So there are financial problems in an Islamic mortgage. It's more complex. It's more risky. Right? But there's also more stability because I'm not playing with money. I'm playing with assets, which is very important. right? And so there's more risk involved and there's more stability involved. But with that risk, it costs more money and there's a huge risk and therefore rightfully more expensive. So people, again, what they do, they look at a conventional mortgage and say, well, I'm going to pay this percent and I'm going to pay it over so many years. And I look over at Islamic banks like, subhanAllah, these guys, number one, they're asking more questions. Number two, bigger down payment. Number three, there's no, oh my God, you are just trying to make money out of the deen. All you did is paid a mufti to sign a piece of paper off for you and then trying to make money out of me. Why would I spend the same installments for another 10 years as opposed to pay it off earlier? That doesn't make any sense. There's no difference between an Islamic mortgage and a conventional mortgage, except an Islamic mortgage is more expensive. That's not what we hear. That's not the reality, though. That's not the reality. The reality is there is more risk to a bank doing an Islamic mortgage. There is more stability in the economy and more stability overall, but there is more immediate risk, and therefore that's why they're charging you more. They are charging you more because you're getting more. And they are risking more. And so we don't look at just the numbers, look at actually what's happening, the liability involved. It's very important. That said, this is an overview and general idea. You need to contact a local mufti who knows the banks in your area and what they're doing and how they're doing things. Because a fatwa online or a fatwa of the greatest sheikh in the world cannot help you without somebody who knows the specifics. What is this bank doing? Is that bank actually, they've had a product, an Islamic product, okayed by a board of muftis? Are they actually applying it? What's going on? You need to find out the specifics, and the specifics can only be given to you by locals. They cannot give it to you by somebody listening to giving a general talk to the whole of North America or the whole of the West or the whole of any country. And so we looked at sales, and in that, buying and selling a house, and then we have services and investments. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.